Honourable Member for Grande, Prairie-Wapiti.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The new 24% tariff on Canadian softwood lumber exports to the U.S. hurts Alberta's forest producers. The ongoing dispute will hurt industry, hurt jobs, and harm Alberta's export growth. One of the biggest problems for Canada to negotiate the new agreement is achieving consensus amongst all provinces. To the Minister of Forestry, how are you working with other provinces and the federal government to resolve the softwood lumber dispute?
Good question. Good question.
Minister of Agriculture and Forestry.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and the member for the question. So our government was standing shoulder to shoulder with forest industry, and the communities rely on lumber as we go through this dispute. We will defend ourselves vigorously and work closely with our industry and other Canadian governments to mount the most effective defence we can. The Alberta Forest Products Association has praised our government attention to this file by saying, "We greatly appreciate the dedication of Premier Notley and her government to this very important file." We want to see a long-term solution, Mr. Speaker, and we'll continue to work with my colleagues right across the country to do so. Thank you.
First supplemental.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Given the big uncertainty caused by having no softwood lumber agreement, and given all the other uncertainties faced by the forest industry, such as the caribou management plan, mountain pine beetle, cut block retention, and the carbon tax, to the same minister, what can you do to work with the industry to help relieve some of these other uncertainties?
Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, the member for the question. So together with the federal government, we're exploring options about how we can support those important jobs in forestry industries in Alberta. But also, Mr. Speaker, there's other things we can mitigate some of these issues, like increasing our trade to Asia, for instance, which we continue to do. The Minister of Economic Development, Trade, and the Premier just came back promoting all our trade in Asia. We'll continue to do that, those trade missions. I take part in a federal provincial task force as the Deputy Minister, as the Assistant Deputy Minister does as well, to ensure that we get these programs the best we can to support our industries here in Alberta.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. Second supplemental.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Given that the forest industry needs to expand to markets around the globe to diversify Alberta's export market for forest industry products, and given that the United States tariff on the Canadian softwood lumber enhances the urgency to find new markets, to the Minister of Forestry, what are you doing to find other markets for Alberta forest producers so we aren't so reliant on the U.S. market?
Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and the member for the question. There's more we can do right here in Alberta to encourage more use. We've initiated a wood charter here in the province to encourage more use of wood within building projects here in Alberta. Trade missions to Asia. We continue to support Canada Wood, for example, in Asian markets. To be able to support our industry in those markets, we have increased our trade within Asia, and we can do more there. As we fundamentally disagree with the United States stand that we somehow subsidize our industry. This is the 5th time we've had this fight. We're going to be successful.